Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest edition of Terrace Talk, and of course, the last Terrace Talk of the season. More generally, hopefully, there'll be a couple more on the horizon with some playoff games for Norwich City. But 45 games done in the Championship, one to go. It is St Andrews on Saturday for Norwich City when they head to Birmingham. With that, delighted to be joined by EFL expert and Birmingham City fan Gabriel Sutton. Gab, first and foremost, thanks for joining me this morning. Big game on Saturday for both sides. Norwich require a point to mathematically secure playoffs, or at least avoid a huge goal swing, but for Birmingham, it feels like a must-win game. What's kind of the mood, I suppose, around St Andrews at the moment?
Yeah, it certainly is a must-win game for us, Adam. I think after the win over Coventry and the atmosphere there was sort of quite a big feeling of belief that Birmingham could win at least one of the last two away games we've had at troubled Yorkshire clubs that are destined for the drop. Obviously, we've only managed 2 points from those games, which is, I think, a real setback, and it puts us on the back foot going into the final day because now it's not just in our hands. We've had crucial final day showdowns or last home game showdowns in previous years. I can remember one against Huddersfield and one against Fulham, but back then it was very much a case of if we win, we put ourselves in the driving seat. Whereas this time around, we're relying on Plymouth Argyle to get a bad result, and I think that's a bit of a worry, I think, for the fan base.
Yeah, you mentioned them two away games recently, only taken 2 points from sides where, one of those games, if you'd have won it, could have potentially changed kind of the destiny, I suppose, of Birmingham going into the final game of the season. Is there maybe a frustration from the fan base that you couldn't take more from those games, given the side you were playing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the timing of Rotherham appointing Steve Evans probably wasn't great because that sort of gave them a bit of fresh organisation. Whereas I think if we'd played them when they had Liam Richardson as manager, then it could have been a different story and we might have won that. And then it's quite frustrating not to beat Huddersfield, who are in a position of sort of anarchy at the moment. Their manager, Andre Breitenreiter, has spoken about the sort of unrest within the squad and questioned the mentality of a lot of the players. So to only take 2 points from those away games is pretty frustrating. I think we are stronger at home, especially with the atmosphere that we can create at St Andrews. But again, we're relying on Argyle to, if we win, we're relying on Argyle to fail to win.
Yeah, we spoke back in sort of September time when the sides met, and you kind of spoke about the positive mood, I suppose, around Tom Wagner's arrival, and everything was positive, and maybe felt like you're on course for a better season. Not turned out that way. How do you kind of assess the season as a whole? Maybe I know there's been a lot of sort of managerial changes and lots of upheaval at different points. I suppose maybe a disappointment that it's not panned out how you'd have hoped.
Yeah, at times you've probably had the more popular Wagner, Adam, but no, I think. Do you know what? I think if relegation happens for Blues under this ownership regime, I think it's actually better than it would have been if we'd gone down under Trillion Trophy Asia or BIHL or anything from the last 10 years. So there is that crumb of comfort because I think if we went down into League One, we'd probably have by far the biggest budget at that level, certainly if Bolton come up. And so actually in terms of the big picture, I don't think relegation would be the absolute final catastrophe that it might have been in a previous era. But at the same time, that doesn't make it any less of a worry or any less rubbish if it did happen, because of course it'd be a horrible thing for fans. But I think there's not that feeling of what this means for the long-term future of the club if we were to go down, because I still think on balance we're in good hands.
Do you feel like the managerial changes have had an impact on Birmingham this season? You mentioned like Eustace at the start of the campaign, really positive impact. Then you had the Rooney era, which didn't go to plan. Mowbray, of course, unfortunate with everything that's gone on there. You've then obviously had the transition back to Gary Rowett. I mean, imagine that's, for the players, it's quite a difficult situation.
It certainly is, Adam. I think we've had 6 different managers in the dugouts this season. So, and I think that's gonna we look like a team that's had that, to be honest with you, because earlier in the season, when we made the decision to sack John Eustace, which I think was a really bad call from the board, Wayne Rooney tried to get us playing out from the back, and the players weren't quite used to doing it that way, and that caused a lot of issues. And then, ironically, I think what we've had, Tony Mowbray sort of steadied the ship after Wayne Rooney, but then when we've had Gary Rowett, we've actually had this weird situation where the players by now are actually quite comfortable playing out from the back, but we've now got a manager that wants us to go long, so it's kind of it's a result of this sort of mismatch, and we've not got a sort of a joined up identity, a bit like, I suppose, the conversations you've been having in recent years about Norwich. That's having an impact on the pitch, and this is the other thing. I think in terms of the quality of squad, I think it's more than good enough for mid-table. We've got Pipe Sung Ho, who I think came in January. He's linked up really nicely with Koji Miyoshi. He's an attacking midfielder who's really agile and spins away from people and creates. He's got lots of energy. So I like that both those players. Jay Stansfield's had a really good season on loan. We've got Christian Bielik, who can play centre-back or at the base of midfield, and he's a very solid operator. Jordan James is a really exciting talent who Premier League clubs are after. So you look at the group of players and actually think, we're better, that we should be better than a relegation battle, but I think it's because of the turbulence in the dugout that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, of course, Gary Rowett in temporary charge, 2 wins, 2 draws, 3 defeats so far. If he gets a win on Saturday and keeps you up, how sort of high regard would then he be held by Birmingham fans? I know he's got a really good reputation from sort of previous times.
Yeah, absolutely, because he was very well liked as a player for us when he was a defender. And then as a manager, he did a fantastic job taking us up from our lowest ebb, got a couple of top 10 finishes. And then I'm sure you remember the sort of controversy of his sacking and what happened to us after that. So, listen, Gary Rowett's a club legend. Hopefully he can continue that status on Saturday. But I think regardless, I think he'll always be held in high regard at the football club because he's a classy bloke and he's a good manager.
Who's maybe been the key man so far this season and someone Norwich fans should be aware of on Saturday? I know sort of Jay Stansfield gets the headlines, 12 goals, 2 assists. Jordan James seems to be having a really good breakthrough season. Are those maybe a couple of players that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I think Jay Stansfield certainly. In recent seasons, we've not had a centre striker that really gets in behind, probably since Che Adams, who I think scored against you lot in your first title-winning season under Fark. Jay Stansfield's been really important for us just in terms of that mobility that we've had getting in behind, because in previous seasons it's been Hogan or Djukovic for quite a while actually, and I'm surprised we've not really been able to address that area. But it's quite hard work watching Hogan or Djukovic up top because neither of them are particularly good nowadays at championship level. So Jay Stansfield's made a real difference, I think, and he'll be looking to do damage.
Yeah, there's a few connections between the two sides. Of course, Ono Hernandez out injured, but had a spell at Birmingham. You've got Alex Pritchard, also formerly of Norwich City.
You've had Ono Hernandez in the Barclay, though. He's not been that absent.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Of course, the one player I wanted to speak about was John Ruddy. I know he had a really good season last campaign at St Andrews. How he's been getting on this season? He's sort of a man who's still well loved from his spell at Norwich City. I'm sure he'll get a good reception on Saturday from our fans. But how's his season been more generally?
I would say John Ruddy's probably dropped off a little bit this season. Last year, he was one of our top 2 players, along with Austin Trusty, who's now at Sheffield United. But this season, his form has dropped off a little bit. So I imagine we'll be looking to recruit a goalkeeper in the summer.
Yeah, just interested to get your take on Norwich this season. There's been sort of lots of turbulence at different points. A season that started really well, dipped around sort of the autumn period, and then picked up again under David Wagner this second part of the campaign. From someone who's sort of been watching it from afar, what have you made of it?
Well, I'm actually quite surprised that you are in this position, looking likely to get a playoff spot on the final day, because I think there's been times where you had a good August, I think, and then dropped off around September, October, and November, and ended up, I think, in 17th at one point. But I think maybe during that sort of tough period, we underestimated how big a difference Josh Sargent was going to make, because Johnny Rowe was a really crucial player, even when the team wasn't playing that well, sort of collectively. But Josh Sargent probably doesn't stand out as much as an individual as someone like Johnny Rowe, but I think he makes a bigger difference to the collective impact just because of his energy and the way that he presses. And then, so yeah, him, Borja Sainz, Gabriel Sutton are all players that have really impressed me this season. So yeah, I think, I think Josh Sargent is the one who really makes it tick from what I can see.
Yeah, barring certain events, looks like Norwich will be in the playoffs. Just interested to get your take on that and maybe what could unfold. Do you give Norwich any hope against kind of the bigger guns of Southampton and Leeds, depending on who they play?
Well, I think we'll call them lot down the road going up. It's probably going to give you a bit of a kick up the backside, I guess. And sometimes that can be quite a healthy thing for a club. I guess that's what you'll kind of be looking to sort of try and seize on, I guess. There's that motivational factor. Southampton are a good, tidy, possession-based side. They've obviously had a 25-game unbeaten run, but I still think they can be got at defensively. I wouldn't necessarily want to fall behind Southampton because of how well they look after the ball when they're ahead. But actually, I do also feel that in transitions, they can be really vulnerable and they can be sort of carved wide open quite easily. So again, that's what you'll be looking to do with the likes of Borja Sainz, if it is Southampton that you're playing. So I think, you've got a decent chance of getting to the final. And, you look at the form that Leeds are in as well. Neither Leeds nor Southampton are absolutely, you'd say, are in sizzling form. So, I think you've got a chance.
Yeah, moving back to the game on Saturday, how important do you think the home aspect is going to be for Birmingham? I sort of looked at the tables and I think you're second bottom in away form, but the home form's been pretty good this season. What's the atmosphere going to be like and how crucial a component could that be then for what could unfold, I suppose?
Yeah, it's a sold-out ground, and I think that always makes a difference. We can create a really raucous atmosphere in those sorts of big home games. They normally happen when we're fighting to stay up, Adam, rather than when we're in a promotion race. We've not had that for a while. But we can create a bit of a fortress. So I do think that we've got a good chance of winning. So it's kind of all about going to be what Plymouth Argyle do against Hull from our point of view. I'm not taking it for granted that we'll win, but I would think we've got a good chance.
Yeah, you've mentioned this has been done a few times before with Birmingham and survival on final days. How does this one maybe rank in terms of difficulty? It's not in your own hands, as you've mentioned. It requires Plymouth dropping points against Hull and you've taken advantage of the result against Norwich. How difficult maybe does this one rank in terms of ones that have gone before?
Yeah, I think... to be honest, I would kind of back us in this situation because we always seem to be able to create a bit of a fortress on the final day. And I think that atmosphere can really lift the players. For some reason, it's really hard to create that over the course of a full season because when it's sort of Rotherham at home in a Tuesday night in November, it doesn't create that same sort of fortress as it would do sort of one of those crucial games in April and May. But home form's really good, especially on Saturdays. I think we've got a good chance of winning.
Yeah, with that, going to ask you for a score prediction. I think it's just one Birmingham win against Norwich in the last 18 meetings. We've kind of had the upper hand.
Oh, really?
But with all that and all the context around this game.
Maybe you've had to pay us back for the playoff final in 2002. Yeah. So, we'll give you that one.
Yeah, I think there's only been a couple of Birmingham wins since then. With that, are you going to get the win on Saturday, Gab? Score prediction, will that be enough to survive?
Yes, I'm going to say 2-1 to Birmingham, and hopefully Plymouth Argyle don't beat Hull.
There we go. That's Gab's thoughts ahead of this one. First and foremost, of course, Gab, really do appreciate your time this morning and all your thoughts and feelings there. Big game, lots of good content coming your way across our channels heading into this one, and hopefully some playoff games, of course, on the horizon afterwards. You've got the Pinker Plus app, which you can take advantage of ahead of this, potential exciting end to the season for the Canaries, $2.99 a month or $29.99 for an annual subscription. So that's well worth checking out. We'll be speaking to David Wagner tomorrow, whether Ashley Barnes and those players will be available for the trip to St Andrews. So keep it locked across our channels. And with that, of course, thanks for joining me this season. More generally, for every single Terrace Talk, support has been much appreciated. And of course, every guest I've spoken to, they're taking their time out of their day to speak to me. So really do appreciate it. With that, we'll sign off and I'll see you in the next one.